Thank you all for joining the session. We're going to cover off on automating Citrix Health Checks. If you're not familiar with our new automated Citrix Health Check module, this is going to be a very informative webinar for you. My name is Kiri Pence. I lead product marketing here at Goliath Technologies, and I'm joined by Martin Quinnen, a newer face on our Masterclass webinar series. He's one of our client success engineers, and he's going to be walking us through the technology, getting into the demo, the part you actually want to see on this session. I'll take care of a few housekeeping items and then a little bit of an overview, and we'll dive into the demo itself. We do want this to be an engaging session, so please ask questions. Whatever your questions are, type them into the question and answer tab in your GoToWebinar toolbar, and we will make sure that we get to as many of your questions as we can before the end of the session. Of course, as always, if there's anything we can't get to, we run out of time, etc., we'll make sure that we follow up with you on that. We will also launch with just a quick poll, just take a few seconds to do, and before we jump into the session. And then at the end of the webinar, once you exit out of the webinar, there's a brief, it's like 4-question survey. It'll take you all of probably 15 seconds to fill out, but it helps us to understand whether or not we hit the mark with this session and what you'd like to hear from us in future sessions. So if you wouldn't mind taking just a few seconds to fill that out after the session. As far as this webinar and what we're going to cover, like I said, we'll do a quick poll here in just a few seconds, but we're just going to jump right into the content. We'll do a quick overview of what our automated Citrix Health Check module is, sort of setting a baseline with that, and then we're going to jump right into the technology so that you can see what it looks like sort of in the wild. Once we get through the demo, then we'll take some time for questions and answers. If questions are relevant that are coming in throughout the session, we're happy to sort of take those in real time as well. And then we'll go ahead and wrap up. So to get us kicked off, let me launch a quick poll. Very simple, yes or no question. Do you have a Citrix Health Check planned for 2025? So it's simple yes, no, or maybe it's something that you're considering. So we'll give that just a few seconds for you guys to fill that out. Just sort of helps us to understand where everyone is at in their thinking towards health checks. And maybe health checks are something that are unfamiliar to you. Maybe you've heard about them, but you haven't really considered them for a number of reasons. We'll look at some of those reasons as well. Okay, just a few more seconds, and then we will close it out. Okay. So it looks like it's about half and half as far as people who are either planning on it or considering it versus people who haven't been considering it. So when we get through this session, it'll be interesting to see. Probably I should have done an exit poll as well, just to see if your thoughts on that change. But it'll be interesting to hear your feedback as well as we go through this. So what exactly are we talking about when we're talking about Citrix Health Checks and the automated Citrix Health Check module? Health checks in general, if you're not familiar with them or if it's a fairly new terminology for you, it's really a proactive way to ensure that your Citrix is performing as expected, that it's optimized. Generally speaking, they're done on an annual basis. It's really just kind of considered good annual hygiene for your Citrix environment. But as the poll indicates, and as we hear quite often, there's a lot of reasons why organizations aren't even considering Citrix Health Checks. Number one, they're costly. These aren't something that are automated. These are things that are a very manual process. Almost always, organizations are leveraging consultants to come in and help with that. Problem is that sort of becomes a multi-tiered approach. So you hire a consultant to come in to actually conduct the health check, but then they just kind of serve you up with a report on that. So it gives you an idea of what's wrong, but if you need help analyzing that, there's probably an extra upcharge for that. And then if you want them to help you with remediation, there's an upcharge for that. So health checks can be really, really expensive when you have to leverage consultants to do it. They're very time consuming, which is often why consultants are brought in, because you're already strapped for IT resources. So you don't have the multiple weeks to months that it takes to do, a complete health check, depending on the size of your environment. You might not even have the additional expertise for some of the remediation, depending on what's out of alignment there. The other reason is they're just a snapshot in time. So you do this annually, and it means the next year you have to repeat it again, and so on and so forth. And any issues that change sort of in that interim time in between, you're totally blind to anything that sort of falls out of misconfiguration or misalignment in your environment. And the last thing that we've been hearing is they really just focused on the Citrix environment. Of course, we know that there's a lot of IT infrastructure that's involved in delivering Citrix. So having a health check that's only focused on the Citrix piece leaves a lot of the rest of it unchecked versus, sort of that full end user experience visibility. So those conversations were really the impetus to us developing an automated health check module. And we didn't do this on our own. We actually went to the experts in the field. We went to Citrix CTPs to help develop this automated health check module, because the experts in the field are the ones that know specifically for the things, sort of those nuanced things that we wouldn't think to check on our own as traditional IT admins that are sort of managing our environment. There's a lot of sort of obscure things in your environment that you might not realize are impacting the overall performance of your environment. So we've put together this automated health check module with the help of Citrix CTPs, namely George Spears, if that's a familiar name to you, to put this together to help uncover those more obscure things, including some of the obvious things, but maybe we just don't think about it because we're too busy putting out fires all the time. Who has time to be proactive? And that's we're trying to get you out of the firefighting business and more in the proactive IT business. So when you think about an automated health check module from us, we're providing two primary things. You're getting that immediate health check assessment, which is what you would get if you were doing it through a consultant or even doing it on your own, sort of that beginning snapshot in time. But then we're also providing the ongoing health checks in the interim time. So with that immediate automated health check assessment, it's not just a check. So you're getting the automated configuration and settings checks. That all comes in it. But you're also getting reports on settings that are outside of the best practices. So you're getting the reporting and the analysis that goes with it. But on top of that, with the reporting, you're also getting resolution guidance. So when you get a failed health check, it gives you the guidance on how to remediate that specific issue. And when Martin gets into the technology, he'll show you what that looks like. But then you're also getting sort of the ongoing checks as well. So instead of having this be an annual process and being blind in between, maybe you choose to run these monthly. Maybe you choose to run them quarterly. Maybe you want to do it more often and run them weekly. That's totally up to you because it's an automated module. So it's not something that takes additional time out of your schedule and requires additional IT resources to do. It's a matter of configuring it to run, and then it just runs on its own and generates a report. So you're going to get the automated configuration and setting checks on that ongoing basis, again with alerts and the resolution guidance to fix actions. You can also leverage automation as well to automatically remediate things. So you don't, some organizations want to let automation run its course. Some are a little bit averse to that. CrowdStrike has made a lot more people more averse to that. They want to have their hands on and really see what's going to change before automation. But we have options for both, depending on what your flavor is. And then you're getting reports and analytics on not just the Citrix Health, but also on the impact to end user experience. And we have more than 120 checks that are part of the automated health check module. And that will be increasing over time because as new additions come out, the health checks will be continuously updated. So it's always providing checks on the latest guidance from Citrix. So the way the automated checks work, you start with deploying it. So it's pre-configured. The health checks go into your environment. They start working. They're looking for issues that fall outside of Citrix best practices, outside of Citrix guidance. So you think of it as you're looking for all of the future troubleshooting tickets that never actually have to be realized, because you're going to get advance notice of what's wrong and you're going to have the opportunity to fix that. Then after it is deployed, it starts checking again for those settings and configurations. And again, not a one and done thing. This is something that could be done continuously. So as changes in your environment occur, maybe you add additional software, maybe you change things out, maybe there's a midterm update in there. That's something that is going to be something that could potentially impact your settings, configurations, thresholds, etc. So having the ability to run those checks continuously will help identify issues that would impact performance. So it performs the checks. It's going to alert depending on how you have it set. You can have it set to send you alerts. You can have it set to just report on what's wrong. But you're going to get all of those alerts and reporting that fall on items that fall outside of the Citrix best practice thresholds. But again, we're not just alerting, we're providing the resolution guidance that comes with that. So we don't just tell you what's broken. You're going to get a report that shows what needs to be fixed, and then you're also going to get instructions on how to actually go and fix that. Again, automated options are available for you if you prefer to use automation in that sense, and that's something that you can custom configure. So some things you might be fine with automatically remediating, other things you may want to do it manually. So that all exists as well. And again, then you're getting the reporting for all of the failed check for the failed checks. What is really unique about this, even though the whole thing is unique because there isn't another automated health check module that exists out there today, but what is really unique about this is we're not just looking at the environment, we're not just looking at the IT infrastructure, we're not just looking at the Citrix, the scope of the Citrix deployment. We're also looking at impact on end user experience. So imagine being able to run an end user experience health check. Maybe you run it before you run the health check and then remediate issues, and then you remediate all the issues that are exposed during the Citrix health check, and then you run the end user experience health check after the fact. You can see what the impact on those changes has been on your end user experience. So we're taking this all the way to the end user experience level. So it's not just looking at IT infrastructure settings and configurations. We're taking it all the way through what the impact of those changes are on the end user experience. And that's where you really get this holistic view of what you're delivering as far as the quality of the IT experience for your end users. So this becomes a really exciting part of this automated health check module. That is a brief overview. I didn't want to kill you with slideware on this because I know you want to see it in the technology itself. So at this point, I'm going to bring Martin into the conversation. So let me go ahead and switch over the presenter rights to Martin. He's going to get us right into the technology so that we can see exactly what it looks like in the wild. And you'll see how it's deployed, how it's configured. You'll see what the reports look like. You'll see what the things that it's checking for. And again, the ability to sort of understand proactively what's happening in the performance and optimization of your Citrix environment. So with that, Martin, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you.
Sounds great. Thanks, Kiri. And just to confirm, you can see my screen okay at this time?
Yes.
All right, awesome. So getting into the product, I did want to show everyone just initially what Goliath does out of the box by default. And then we're going to layer in some of the capabilities of our Citrix Health Check module. So starting off, some of our current customers who may be on the call today may be familiar with this view in the technology. Others who may not have seen this view in the technology before, what you're looking at is our automatic discovery and dependency map of a Citrix environment. As soon as we deploy Goliath in an environment, we're enabling APIs to auto-discover, auto-map, and draw out your environment. The reason I show this to you as we're getting into the health check module is because Goliath by default looks for events, conditions, and failure points, things that can impact user experience in real time, running out of resources, a service going down, etc. However, there's a number of back-end changes that are critical to have in place on your, whether it's delivery infrastructure or your VDA session hosts at any time. Many times, figuring out which of those configurations are out of place getting them fixed, and all of the steps that Kiri just walked through can be time consuming, expensive, and otherwise just difficult to walk through. We've decided to automate this process by across all of your machines, like you're seeing here with our automatic dependency map, as well as the rest of your Citrix environment, layering in the Citrix Health Checks. So I'll go ahead and open up the back end of the technology here and show you guys just a list of some of the health checks that we implement today. This currently sits at over 100 different configurations, settings, and activities that should or should not be, say, enabled or disabled on your, say, VDAs, delivery infrastructure, or really anywhere in your Citrix environment. Looking for those hard to find, but potentially easy to fix issues with the Citrix environment that should be configured as a best practice. As Kiri mentioned, this will be run on a continuous basis in your environment. So no need to have a consultant come in to go ahead and take days, even weeks of time to execute and assess what all of these different conditions look like in your environment. You can not only have Goliath execute them on a continuous basis or scheduled, have Goliath alert you when critical ones are out of place, for example, generate tickets even, but also be able to report to you exactly what the full distribution of configurations look like in your environment. Accompanied with each and every one of these checks, you'll see some unique capabilities. Jumping into one of these, say, for example, the check against the high performance power plant. If we go in, we can see the full configuration, checks that we're doing, etc. Going into, say, the resolution notes that accompany each and every one of our over 100 checks, you can see, for example, the specific notes that accompany this. So I'll go ahead and just make sure that my selection is correct. One moment here. Good old demo environment. Go ahead and open this up. There you go, power plan. So then being able to see, for example, the accompanying explanation. Goliath telling you not only why is this significant, but what impact could it have on the Citrix environment if, say, this type of configuration is not in place? And critically importantly, you'll see steps to resolve it. So no need to have those additional modules, additional charges or anything like that from a consultant to go ahead and put together, say, a remediation plan for you. This is all built in and executed every time Goliath checks those various configurations in your environment. So of course, going through some of these, obviously, as I mentioned, things that may be easy to check, but difficult to detect, especially when, say, we're doing a upgrade. Maybe we're doing a migration or something, right? I'll show you just one that we recently saw in an environment where some of you may be familiar with SMB 1.0, an old deprecated system that has significant security vulnerabilities. This should be disabled in most environments. However, of course, in our large ones, and what we saw even at a recent customer, was largely this was disabled. After running the Citrix Health Check here, automated, we were able to get a report back of exactly where this particular feature was found to be enabled. We found it to be on a subset of the Citrix environment, specifically older build VDAs running that 1912 LTSR, as opposed to some of the newer 2203s, 2402s, etc. You can see going in here, you have, again, those similar remediation notes, some points about, say, why this is important, where should we go, as well as you'll see the specific, say, command to go ahead and run to remediate this. Reason I point this one out is, first off, this is something that we recently saw, so it's recent in memory, but also is a great example of where we can start to involve things like the automatic remediation as well. I'll go ahead and say copy out the command that's contained right within, again, the built-in remediation actions. We can then have Goliath, along with each and every one of these, as I mentioned, do things like notifications to your ticketing systems, email distributions, even Teams channels, but also build in automatic remediation, where all we would need to do is run in and say, run the PowerShell program and pass in the very argument that is contained within the remediation notes. Then every time Goliath goes ahead and checks on, again, a continuous basis in your Citrix environment, something old and deprecated with significant security vulnerabilities can be remediated, disabled, and remain out of the way of your standard operations, and of course, keep your security posture in the best possible state. So just one example, one that I actually assisted our customer to go ahead and put this type of a configuration in, but being able to get those sorts of changes and again, continuous checks on all corners of your environment, which can be difficult and sometimes require multi-team coordination, can be a very difficult task in some cases.
That's a great example too, Martin, of sort of the obscure things that we talked about earlier, the things that you would necessarily think to check, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, Martin, but like by default, that is disabled, right? So it shouldn't have been like the expectation for that team at that customer was that it wasn't enabled, because by default it's not supposed to be, but somehow it was. And unless they went specifically and checked that specific thing, it would be missed, which is exactly what happened. And it was the health check that they ran that actually uncovered that.
That's exactly correct, Kerry. And it's not only, say, just the old deprecated systems, right? Maybe we've done a great job and we're really on top of, maybe we have a really good security team putting together all of those, right? However, maybe another recent example that we saw with some of our customers. One in particular being one of our customers was evaluating and ended up implementing Citrix Federated Authentication Services, or Citrix FAS. They went ahead and built out those servers, liked the feature set, and implemented it into their Citrix environment. When we came in to do the Citrix Health Check module, we went ahead and checked a series of systems that should be best practices in regards to keeping a system up and running. Specifically, when it comes to FAS, we were seeing an issue with DNS redundancy. This particular check, now checking when network adapters are only looking toward one DNS server. This could obviously be a very large issue when it comes to redundancy and reliability, since if those servers only have one configured DNS and don't have any way of recovering, we're going to have an entirely down system, right? A complete outage of the FAS services on those servers if we can't reach that particular DNS server. Obviously, any of us who have been troubleshooting DNS at all know that can be a bit of a fickle system, especially when it comes to the minor changes in a day-to-day operations. So having that type of reliability in place is extremely important. And running this health check, what we saw is the two servers that flagged were in fact the FAS servers. And because they were migrated straight out of the POC or evaluation build, they were built on a minimal scale for speed of operation so they could test the features. However, when they made them production servers and passed between the production teams, server build teams, and everyone else involved, that particular detail of the DNS redundancy on the network adapter, right, multiple menus in, was out of place, never adjusted, and we were seeing a not optimal setup for DNS redundancy. This is another one we were able to flag and go ahead and get that pointed out and corrected for optimal configuration within the delivery infrastructure in that case. So just another example of how we'll see the health check module checking some of those maybe niche configurations and such. I'll give everyone a moment just to scroll on through here, and what I'll show you next is some of the outputs. So obviously this health check is quite long. We're checking over 100 different configurations and settings. In some of those, as I mentioned, potentially minor locations, however, that could have major impacts in the Citrix environment. So one of the things that is important is to have all of this information, not have to say click into each one when it triggers or get an alert to try and go in, investigate those different remediation actions and such, but to be able to get this all out in one place. I'll go ahead and show you now what this looks like from our reporting perspective. What I'm showing you now is our health check output report. So whenever this runs, many customers will run this on a daily, weekly, even a monthly basis, depending on the business needs. You can see exactly where our checks are running, which machines are passing at which rates, as well as which machines are most affected based on, say, a threshold of, fails 5 checks or more, for example. We can see which machines are most affected. That way we get a distribution of all of the different checks that did see failures, at what rates, on which machines, and then for each individual one, as this report scrolls through, you'll see the individual failed checks on the machines affected, the resolution notes accompanying it, where you can go ahead and get, again, the explanation, as well as the resolution steps, all in a single place for you to understand, hey, maybe it is my singular image that I failed to put a particular configuration on, or maybe I did a recent upgrade that may have made a small change that I didn't notice, that we can then make sure we get into a better posture and better configuration for optimal Citrix performance. Some of these,
and it's those resolution notes that that become a really huge value point, because again, when you're working with consultants, this becomes an additional charge. It's generally not, resolving the issue is not necessarily part of the health check that it is done. So providing organizations with the ability to go and remediate on their own with specific instructions on how to do that becomes really powerful. The other thing with the resolution guidance is you don't necessarily have to be the Citrix architect or engineer to go in and resolve the issues now. So because there's been specific instructions provided, it sort of democratizes the responsibility of being able, or I guess capability, of others on the IT team of being able to go and actually resolve these issues without having to necessarily be the expert on staff for how to get into the deep inner workings of the Citrix environment. So that becomes a really powerful way of utilizing the remediation instructions as well. Sorry, Martin, didn't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to call that out.
No, of course, it's incredibly important, right? And extremely valuable when it comes to giving all of our, say, admins or anyone who's using Goliath the ability to make sure that Citrix is in an optimal configuration, rather than, again, waiting those timelines, paying those fees, and having to work maybe multi-teams or in and out with consultants, for example, to get all of this done, which, again, going to have to run again in maybe a couple of months as soon as you make an upgrade or a change. Do want to just check to see if there's any questions in the chat.
We do have a few questions that have come in, Martin.
I'm having trouble viewing that. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. One of the questions was around, so it's the health checks are checking for the settings and configurations. And I'm assuming they're, this person joined the webinar to try to understand this second part, but the question is if it detects settings and configurations and they remediate those issues, but they're still having the overarching issue. In this case, they're talking about long logons. Are they able to help get to root cause within the technology for that? So in other words, I'm sort of paraphrasing for this question. It's a long question, sorry. If the health check doesn't fix their issue, can they use Goliath to actually go in and identify root cause? And specifically, they called out logons. So maybe you could show how they would do that. So yeah. Let's imagine they've got a scenario that they've got broad logon issues. This is what I'm assuming is the scenario that they've painted in the question. They run the health check because they think there's something underlying. There surely probably is something underlying that is causing the issue. They uncover everything that's wrong in the health check. They remediate everything, but the logon issues are still there. So it's not tied to a setting or configuration. It's got to be something else. Can they use Goliath to help identify that? Sorry, that framed it up a little bit better. I had to read it through a couple times to sort of make some sense out of it.
No worries. The short answer, absolutely. So is my screen still sharing out? I noticed there was this quick change. Just want to make sure.
Yep.
All right, awesome. So as far as kind of what you're seeing here, still that list of health checks that I was looking at. Maybe you aren't our recent customer who found out that Defender was running on top of their CrowdStrike implementation, doubling up AV and causing all kinds of logon issues after a migration to AWS. So we'll get that one out of the way as far as maybe you're not in that scenario. But let's say you've run the Citrix Health Check, everything's come back in the optimal configuration, but you're still having issues. Luckily, the Goliath product is going to give you full access to insight, root cause analysis, and troubleshooting in as little as 2 to 3 clicks when it comes to finding an issue with logons or really any other user experience issue. We will have the ability, first off, to run reporting. Understand, say, for example, and I'll go ahead and just move over to some of my reports so you can see the wide variety here, but be able to, say, for example, pull a scorecard of logon duration, understand who is impacted, how frequently, and based on user behavior, where our issues are tracking toward. Leveraging something like a summary first can help us get an understanding of where an issue is occurring. But let's say, for example, I just ran the health check and a ticket just came in. Well, I've got to go troubleshoot that. Clearly, the health check didn't prevent everything, and users can still have issues. This is where we'll have customers come into things like our Views tab dedicated toward Citrix experience. This is where you'll have insight into things like individual logons, historical context, being able to drill back in time on any of this. And so that if we see a user experiencing a problem with a logon issue, or multiple users experiencing problems with, say, similar logon times, we can click into any of those sessions and drill down into the 30+ stages of the Citrix logon process, understanding exactly where our problems are coming from, whether it's client and server validation passing through the delivery infrastructure. Again, just as I pointed out at the very top of our presentation today, looking for those events can get conditions as well. So Goliath being able to point out to you which controllers, storefronts, domain controllers, anything are responsible for these connections, telling you where we may have errors, drops, issues such that could be happening on a day-to-day basis, but also full logging of exactly what a user is experiencing, authentication time with that domain controller, group policy application broken out by policy. So we have some adjustment or something unique to a user. Maybe we just had a user change something about their account and now a group policy is not properly mapped to them and it's causing all kinds of problems. This is where you can have that exact insight into those types of issues, but also getting all the way down into the most niche of those issues as far as maybe the workspace side. How long did it take? Almost 4 seconds here to download the ICA file to launch a Citrix session. Maybe we're dealing with connectivity or other network issues. Going into profile load times, stand-up, session creation, everything that is involved in that logon process for users. We can, of course,
something important to call out here too, Martin, because in this particular scenario, it's not necessarily a ticket that has come in and they're trying to troubleshoot a specific issue. This is something that has clearly been ongoing. So they may have to go back historically, right? So this data is not just real-time data, but it goes back historically and it's granular even at the historical level. So there's no roll-ups, there's no averages. So if you have to go back and look at historical sessions to understand what has been going on and maybe make some comparisons between sessions, locations, etc., Martin can get a little bit more detailed about that. The ability to go back historically with just as much granular detail as the real time becomes really, really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll have customers even say run a scorecard like this, just a high level overview of logon experience in this case, right? Be able to compare week by week, can simply go through, past runs and future runs of these different scorecards or various reports and see that, hey, we're seeing a recent upwards trend in initial logon or maybe in reconnects. Then be able to go into the specific time frames that we're evaluating, reflect those in Goliath so we can look specifically at a time frame and go check out exactly what changed. What did we see week over week? Who's experiencing those issues? How often? And have that full insight as I just showed you into the various stages of the logon process, but also in a full granular historical fashion. So if it takes looking up a particular user and understanding how their logon has behaved over time, we can absolutely give you all of that insight without any need to roll up, look at averages, or be faced with maybe data that's gone since we're in a non-persistent environment or something like that. Everything's retained historically, and just as you mentioned, Kiri, not rolled up, averaged, anything like that.
Awesome. So there's a couple questions specific to the health check module that I'm going to answer, but there's another question that I'm going to let you go ahead and get teed up and ready for, Martin, that has to do with the discovery and dependency map, and specifically what can be pulled into that. So if you can sort of get ready to talk about that, I'll ask or answer some of these other questions specific to the modules. One of the question was about updated vendor guidance. So how is that handled? So that's going to be something that will be updated on a quarterly basis. So the health check module will not be out of date the moment the next release comes out. So most of the Citrix releases happen quarterly, so we will be updating that module on a quarterly basis. So that is something that you can expect that will be handled on an ongoing basis. Will there be other health checks other than Citrix? That was another question that came in. The answer is yes, absolutely. We've got several in the pipeline. In fact, we're very close to launching our Epic health check module, which we're very excited about, another first of its kind. So for those of you that are in health IT, specifically you're using Epic for your EHR, that'll be really, really powerful for you all. We've got Teams in the pipeline. We've got FS Logics in the pipeline as well. So we've got several more that we've got planned in addition to this first one, which is the Citrix Health Check. Another question here was, sorry, I'm sort of rapid firing these. I want to make sure we have time to get to the questions. Another question is, are consulting services needed to fix issues? No. That is the beauty of the fact that it's automated. The report that it generates and the resolution guidance that are included in the report, that is the perfect way to sort of reduce the need for consulting services or eliminate the need. That said, if you want to leverage consultants, you can certainly leverage consultants for any of this. We offer services as well. So if it's something that you want us to help with, just to keep it clean and easy, we certainly can do that. But the whole idea of the automated health check module and providing the resolution guidance is so that you don't have to be dependent on consultants, but you can always use consultants, including our services, if that's something that is easier for you just based on time allotment for your IT staff. All right, so Martin, we do have a couple more questions, but we'll get to this question that was specific to the discovery and dependency map, and specifically what we can pull into this.
Okay, sure. As far as an overview of the Citrix discovery and dependency map, this is kind of what you're seeing in my demo environment here, is a full Citrix deployment, albeit a little bit on the lean side, since I'm about the only user here. But what you're seeing in here is that full Citrix environment. The beauty of this feature in the technology is Goliath will automatically build this. There's no configuration, no scripting, or anything needed on your side in order to get this set up. And especially when it comes to the embedded intelligence around monitoring for those various events, conditions, and failure points, it also does not require any sort of additional scripting or configuration on your part to get this up and running in an optimal way. You'll see the ability in this view to toggle between multiple Citrix sites, whether that's an active and a passive farm, multiple global farms, anything like that. But also, as soon as we deploy the Goliath APIs, we'll have automatic discovery of everything from the NetScalers and gateways through the storefronts, delivery controllers, as well as the backend peripherals. And again, all automatically built, things like the license server that's registered to your Citrix site, the database that is running, SQL server, I should say, that's running the Citrix database. You'll run, notice I'm running a pretty lean configuration again, but in many of our production environments, we'll see everything from the domain controllers and Active Directory farms that this Citrix environment is tied to. The PVS farms, if we're leveraging provisioning services, those servers, their performance, and those images that they're streaming out. Additionally, things like the vCenter or ZenCenter hook-ins, right, for the supporting hypervisor layers, we'll be able to pull all of that in, and across the board, Goliath is layering in the embedded intelligence. That, on top of drawing this out as a fun little map that you can drag around, zoom in and out, Goliath is layering in that embedded intelligence, where, as you can see, for example, by a yellow delivery controller, we're driving this as a heat map. So many times our customers will keep this up in the environment, be able to click in and see that machine, its current performance, drill back historically into resource utilization, some further trends on those metrics, as well as get the automatic and context-specific health checks and the actual alert documentation from Goliath as to exactly what's going on. Say we're running low on memory, you can see we're teetering in the trend line here, right up at that 80%, and with a threshold set at 20% free. That is why we're going to be seeing some of that. We can then go in historically or investigate further here as to why we might be seeing a recent trend of high memory consumption. As far as what specifically gets pulled in, it's all about what is currently configured in your Citrix environment, but it is entirely built based on an automatic API with no configuration needed on your end.
And this is really like the ultimate in proactive troubleshooting, right? You're getting notifications of things upstream that could potentially impact end user experience downstream, but hasn't yet. So being able to get in there and resolve issues before they impact end users becomes really, really powerful for avoiding those support tickets and fire drills altogether. Cool. Thanks, Martin, for going back and talking about that. Martin, question around deployment. How long does it take? Well, specifically, the question I'm sure is to health checks, but how long does it take to deploy?
Sure. I'll answer that in twofold. Goliath in and of itself is just a matter of hours. It's a matter of building up the server infrastructure, which is usually a Windows app server and backend database. Get all that set up. Everything else pretty much automatically deploys, just like I showed you with the API here that automatically builds this. We do all the rest of the auto discovering as well. Usually data collection and operational use can be achieved in as little as an hour or two. The health check module feature can be implemented in a matter of 15 minutes probably with a Goliath instance already in place. It's extremely simple to import, apply, and as soon as it's applied, Goliath's going to start looking for those various configurations and settings, and then it's maybe 2 more minutes to set up when you want to receive that report on a regular basis.
So for Goliath customers today, 15 minutes, half hour, they're good to go if they want the health check module. For people who are net new to Goliath, a couple hours to get it all up and running. Fair to say?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Another question here, does Citrix or does Goliath only monitor Citrix, or do you do other EUC technologies? Great question. Obviously, we're talking about Citrix. That is the focus of this webinar. It is a Citrix Masterclass. So that is a fair question. But yes, we monitor all sorts of EUC technologies. So if you're running Horizon, we monitor Horizon as well. Amazon Workspaces, AVD. Yeah, if you've got any virtualized app or desktop, chances are we're able to monitor it and pull that in as well. Of course, if you're in health IT, we talked a little bit about that with our Epic module, Epic Health Check. We also have technical integrations and partnerships with Epic and with Oracle Health EHR, formerly Cerner, and Meditech. So we're pulling more than just Citrix into here. So if you've got hybrid environments, or you're considering, dare I say it, migrating away from Citrix onto something else, because we are hearing it a lot. And it pains me to say that because I am a former Citrite. I worked at Citrix for 8 years before coming to Goliath, but that's a very real scenario right now. We monitor those hybrid environments as well. So great question. Thank you for asking that. All right. Martin, for you, is this on-prem Citrix or does it do Citrix Cloud as well?
The health check module is applicable to both scenarios. The specific checks are going to be generally applicable to most Citrix environments, regardless of DAS or on-premise CVAD. Obviously, the various machines that we'll have, if we have a specific check for the DDC, we'll have a slightly different check for something like your cloud connector, but we are compatible with really anywhere you have Citrix.
Okay, last question in here, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. Are there any limitations to the size of the Citrix environment? The answer to that is no, there are no limitations to the size of the Citrix environment. So regardless whether or not you're an SMB and you got a lean environment, or whether or not you are you're an large enterprise or a large health system, it doesn't matter. We cover both. All right, Martin, if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and take control back here.
By all means.
We'll just wrap up real quick. All right, are you seeing my screen, Martin?
I am.
Fantastic. All right, so next steps. If you are interested in a demo, a trial, a POC, because we do have POC versions of these of the Citrix Health Check module, let us know. Reach out to us. Claudia has been feverishly putting links in the chat, so if that's something you're interested in, you can certainly click on a link in the chat, or you can reach out to us, techinfo@goliathtechnologies.com. We're happy to just give you a personalized walkthrough, set you up with a trial or a POC if that's something that you're interested in. And regardless of what route you take, we're going to include help along the way. So we'll include deployment, the post-check analysis, remediation instructions, and end user experience health check and monitoring as well. PowerPoint's running a little slow, I apologize. So just to recap, again, we've heard from a lot of customers, they steer away from the health checks because they're costly, time consuming. It's just a snapshot in time. We alleviate all of that. You're running the health checks in a fraction of the time for a fraction of the cost, and we're happy to have a deeper conversation with you if that's something that you're interested in. We do have some upcoming webinars. We have this month, actually the next month, sorry, we're at the end of the month already. We've got a Health IT Masterclass. It's going to be focused on how we did it story, so a user story about how a large health system improved EHR speed and reliability. So we're going to be featuring Mike Simic, who is the former IT director at Ascension Health. He's going to actually be interviewed by our own Ryan Oliver, who is a former class research director. The audience for that is going to be clinical and IT executives as well as admins. So it's going to cover off on the details on how they did it, but it's going to talk about some of the high level things too, the impact of speed and reliability of their EHR on the clinician experience. And then we have our next Citrix Troubleshooting Masterclass that is scheduled for April 30th. Again, that audience is going to be for IT professionals. And we're going to leverage the post-webinar survey to help inform what the topic for that needs to be. So we talked about hanging out a little bit longer, filling out that survey. That's going to help inform what the next topic is so that we can make sure that we're hitting the mark for you all on these sessions. So to wrap up, if you're interested in a free trial, POC, we're happy to help with that. techinfo@Goliath Technologies, you can reach us at. You could also go to the website, and like I said, Claudia, thank you, Claudia. She's been in the background helping with logistics. She's been putting links in the chat as well. So with that, Martin, thank you for jumping on the session today. Thank you everyone for joining the session, and we look forward to engaging with you in future sessions.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.